spill out to the broader economy. Ropwa Madzena, Johannesburg.
Well, to evaluate the spin-offs of special economic zones, let's look deeper into a report released this week by the Centre for Development and Enterprise. I've got its Executive Director, Anne Bernstein, with me this evening. Anne, thanks very much indeed for talking to us this afternoon. Just looking at your report released this week, I mean, the overriding theme to me is the fact that the main purpose of these special economic zones should be used, if you like, as a test site to see whether some policies could indeed work in the broader economy. Your report suggests that's not the path these zones are taking. Am I right?
Yes, we have 11 proclaimed zones at the moment, and our assessment is that they don't really offer anything very special to investors. And that's the whole point of a special economic zone, a geographic area where you try and fix various things that are wrong in your economy to make it more attractive to investors. And really what we are offering are essentially publicly funded industrial parks with subsidized infrastructure and office or factory space. And they're not, it's hard to tell, but you have to assess what value they add to our economy and what companies or investors would not have invested in South Africa if we didn't have those. And South Africa is not unusual in this, in that zones fail in many parts of the country, in many parts of the globe, but we're saying something different. We're saying that what South Africa needs is economy-wide innovation. And we're proposing that we use the infrastructure and the underutilized port of Coega in Nelson Mandela Bay for a policy reform zone. What we need is lots and lots of jobs for labor-intensive factories to absorb our enormous unemployment rate. And Nelson Mandela Bay is one of the highest, if not the highest, unemployment rate of all our metros. So we're proposing a special kind of zone different from what we have today, that we think things should be a test case to see if South Africa can attract investors in labor-intensive factories offering low-skill or semi-skilled work.
Do you not find that, Anne Bernstein, in some of these zones that exist already? Let's take the Tshwane Automotive Special Economic Zone. It was celebrated at first glance of bringing in 15 billion rand by Ford, for example. One would argue that it is geared towards exporting because it's building cars and sending it out. What's missing in a project like that?
Well, we pay an enormous amount of subsidies to our automobile manufacturers. That's the first point. The second is I'm not sure that we wouldn't get this investment anyway with the subsidies if we didn't have a zone. But the big issue that we're talking about is labor-intensive activities. Now, automobiles are one of the most automated industries in the world today. And I'm talking about something very different because we have the world's deepest unemployment rate, and that what we really need is to get a lot more jobs for many more people. So we're really saying there seems to be space in South Africa now to cut through the dilemma the country faces, where we have policy paralysis and gridlock, where more and more people from the ANC economic strategy document last year to the National Treasury's reform agenda in 2019 and a number of other significant players are saying South Africa needs to use zones as experiments for policy reform, and we need to focus on labor-intensive manufacturing. And we're putting forward a very practical proposal with a modified labor market regime that we think might just get South Africa some of the many, many jobs that are leaving China and elsewhere and that we desperately need.
Because you have championed this low-skilled work direction for some time in some of your reports. And I would imagine that, you know, some of the impediments or barriers that you would face is things around the bargaining council, for example, within these specialized zones. How do you propose they work? Because you could get some resistance there.
Well, we're saying that these zones firstly, should be freed from bargaining council regulations, that they should have basic health and safety rules, that they should have the national minimum wage, and that the expanded tax incentive should apply to all workers, not just first-time workers. But we're saying that bargaining should take place at factory level. One of the keys to this kind of global exporting is that you can talk about piecework with your workers, you can talk about extra pay for the hours that you might work. There are a whole lot of flexibilities. You've got to be able to respond very quickly to the global demand for, say, purple T-shirts in the US in 3 weeks' time. So you need a lot more flexibility than we currently have, and we're saying that this zone should be freed up from the collective bargaining agreements, and we should have factory-level negotiations. We also should allow in duty-free imports for these factories and skilled managers with knowledge of global supply chains so that South Africa can get into this global market and create a lot more jobs for low-skilled people, which our economy is very bad at doing at the moment.
And before I let you go, just a moment left. Why did Nigeria fail with this expedition of special economic zones, and why did Mauritius come out on top?
Well, in a minute. Nigeria has a famous white elephant, the Calabar free trade zone, and they built it. They thought people would come, but they only negotiated with the import-export authorities after they built it, and they got very little concessions, and so they weren't able to attract the West African elite who they'd hoped to divert from shopping in London and Dubai, but to come to the Calabar port. So that was a classic failure. Sorry, what was your other question?
Well, I just asked you, why was Mauritius successful?
Well, there was luck, but also it was a much better designed zone. They thought carefully about global markets. They thought carefully about the vested interests in Mauritius at the time, the sugar industry, and they designed a zone that was able to match, well, was competitive with global value chains in garments. And so very shortly it was such a success that they expanded it to the whole island, because more and more factories wanted to be part of the concessions, the duty-free imports and the assistance with exporting. And we would certainly hope that a zone that we could build in South Africa, in Coega, could become a success and perhaps have a demonstration effect around the country. But we're really saying that there are more and more people talking about this. Now is the time to actually get a zone, a special zone that is truly special, designed for South Africa's biggest challenge, which is unemployment, particularly of unskilled, inexperienced workers, and that we might just have a chance to get into global supply chains if we design this carefully with private sector investors and run it in a way that is competitive globally.
All right. Anne Bernstein, the CDE Executive Director. Thanks very much.